Jungle.
Hello, you are listening to Trump Republic Radio. It is May 20th, 2018. I'm your host, Enzo Quesada, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Bobby Hester.
Hello, everyone.
And, last week we were talking about how, there was a ton of news to cover, and the show was even longer than it usually is. And we were, hoping that, the next week wouldn't be as long, but I don't know, this has been a very interesting week. A lot of things have came out, not really in terms of, like we've learned new stories that happened this week, but we don't know where it's all going.
Right. That's a good way to describe it. There are a lot of major stories that have come out this week, or at least updates to the ongoing big stories that have been going on for the last several months. So that's about where we stand right now before we begin.
Yeah, and do you have anything we need to talk about before we get into it?
No, I think we should just jump right in.
Okay, let's get into it then. The first thing we want to talk about is this FBI mole in the Trump campaign.
Yes. Leakers to the New York Times confirmed in a story published on Wednesday that the FBI had run a spy operation on the Trump campaign that involved government informants, secret subpoenas, and wiretaps. The story reveals that the FBI had at least one human asset in the Trump campaign who interacted with campaign advisors Carter Page and George Papadopoulos, which amounts to spying. The story comes as House Intelligence Committee Chairman Devin Nunes, Republican from California, was fighting the Justice Department for access to information on the source. President Trump has tweeted multiple times on the issue, saying that, quote, if true, it is the all-time biggest scandal, and that it is, quote, bigger than Watergate. And also, we now found out that it was revealed that the spy was actually Stephen Halper, who is a Cambridge professor with deep ties to both American and British intelligence services. President Trump tweeted just this morning, quote, I hereby demand, and will do so officially tomorrow, that the Department of Justice look into whether or not the FBI/DOJ infiltrated or surveilled the Trump campaign for political purposes, and if such demands or requests were made by people within the Obama administration. So yeah, this kind of confirms what a lot of people thought for a while, was that not only was the Obama administration spying on the Trump campaign, but they actually had people in there that were actively trying to gain information. And this Stephen Halper guy, from what I've heard about him, he's a very shady character. As they said, he has deep ties to both American and British intelligence, which leads people to believe that he might have been someone that was talked to when they were getting that phony dossier from British spy Christopher Steele. It's extremely possible that Stephen Halper, while being part of the Trump campaign as a spy working for the Obama administration, might have been part of that as well. And if so, that furthermore links the Obama administration to, all this anti-Trump stuff that's been going on that we've learned about with the Trump campaign.
Yeah. And, we don't really know as of this moment what this spying curtailed, who authorized it, but, the only thing that I have to say is this isn't normal. This doesn't happen, in regular electoral campaigns. You don't have government agencies, spying and wiretapping the opposition party. It's very insane to even imagine that this happened, but it did, and hopefully we get to the bottom of it.
Yeah, and since Trump said that he's going to officially demand the Department of Justice to do that tomorrow, that's, I guess, a process that's just going to now start. Now, we already have a lot of information out of it, so I feel like it shouldn't take too long to investigate that, especially since there have been, leaks and stuff that are going on. And I would just like to point out that when it says at the very beginning of what I read that leakers to the New York Times confirmed that story, they said that there was over 120 FBI leakers that had signed off, or essentially, on that story, saying that, yeah, it was true, the Obama administration did have a spy working within the Trump campaign. Over 100 people that are essentially whistleblowers on this issue, rank and file FBI folk. So, yeah, it's legitimate.
And it really makes you wonder, considering this is true, what repercussions can come for this or come from it? You know, is there anyone going to receive any punishment for this?
I feel like at the end of this, you're never going to see someone like Barack Obama in handcuffs. You're never going to see someone like Hillary Clinton in handcuffs. What they'll do is they'll have a fall guy, you know? They'll have some high-level person that's, you know, not at the top of the chain ladder there, but someone who's pretty high up that they can just, you know, pin it all on and then have that person go and serve the crimes for everybody else. At this point, we don't exactly know who that might be, but you know, if this investigation leads to anyone high up within the Obama administration, you know, like I said, it's probably not going to be Barack Obama himself, but maybe, you know, maybe someone like his attorney general or even, you know, someone like Comey himself who was probably involved in it. We just don't know. And it could even lead back to members of Congress that were aware of these things, especially high-level people within the Democrat Party. One of those things we will just have to wait and see. But, you know, that kind of goes on to the next story, unless you have anything else that you want to say about that.
No, let's go into the next thing.
So the next thing is more so of an update on the actual Mueller probe itself. And that is that on Wednesday, Rudy Giuliani said that Special Counsel Robert Mueller has told President Trump's legal team that he will follow a 1999 Justice Department memo, which says that federal prosecutors cannot indict a sitting president and will therefore not seek an indictment against President Trump. Giuliani, who joined Trump's legal team last month, said, quote, "The case is essentially over. They're just in denial." Now, Thursday marked the one-year anniversary of the start of the Mueller probe, and Giuliani also announced this morning that Mueller's team has told them that they will be finished with their probe by September 1st. And September 1st cannot come soon enough. This thing has gone on way too long. They spent over $20 million on this thing. There is still absolutely no evidence of obstruction of justice. There is no evidence that the Russian government was trying to help the Trump campaign. There's also no evidence that the Trump campaign was colluding with Russia. The entire thing is a farce, and it needs to have ended a long time ago, but at least they're saying that they're going to be finished by a set date. Now, we'll see what comes to this thing. You know, obviously they'll probably wait till the very end to spring something on someone, and we need to be ready for that. But as it stands now, it looks like we have an end date for the Mueller probe.
And, you know, there's no evidence as far as Russian interference playing any significant role in the electoral outcome. You know, and that's not something that they even argue.
No, it's not. And, you know, you can poll, you know, what is there, 62 million people that voted for Trump? You could probably poll every single one of them and ask them, did the Russian government help swing your vote? Every single one of them is going to say no. People that were going to not vote for Clinton were going to not vote for Clinton regardless. And the people that flipped over to Trump that were Obama voters were people essentially in the Rust Belt states, and they switched for largely economic and immigration-based issues. And then you had just a lot of people that just weren't involved in politics that became involved after, you know, following what Trump was doing. People that hadn't voted in decades that came out to vote for Trump. A lot of them, again, in the Rust Belt states, and a lot of that was because of economic and immigration-based issues. So not one of those people would ever be swayed by, you know, whatever you want to define of as Russian propaganda. I don't even know what they consider that. The $27 that someone spent on Facebook ads, that's not going to swing people to win you the election. They just need to admit it as it was from the start. Hillary Clinton was a bad candidate, and Donald Trump won a better campaign than her.
Yeah, and he narrowly won the U.S. presidency.
Yeah, he did what he needed to do to win and nothing more, and that's called efficiency for anyone that doesn't know what that's called. So,
yeah. But moving on from that, the Trump administration is planning to cut funding for Planned Parenthood.
Yes, the Trump administration is cutting a program under Title X that provides $260 million annually in federal funding to Planned Parenthood that is considered a family planning initiative. They are invoking a 1988 Reagan-era regulation that stated that funding may not be used to directly fund abortions, only contraceptive services. And although the 1998 regulation was never actually enforced, it was actually upheld in the Supreme Court case Rust versus Sullivan with a 5-4 vote. By the time the abortion providers lost their funding, however, Bill Clinton had become president and then axed the regulation. And we have a quote here from a Trump administration official who said the following, quote, "Unlike the Reagan regulation, the proposal will not prohibit counseling for clients about abortion, but neither will it include the current, potentially illegal mandate that prosecutors projects must counsel and refer for abortion. This proposal does not necessarily defund Planned Parenthood, as long as they're willing to disentangle taxpayer funds from abortion as a method of family planning, which is required by the Title X law. Any grantees that perform, support, or refer for abortion services have a choice: disentangle themselves from abortion or fund their activities with privately raised funds. So, you and I stand at different sides of the abortion issue, but both of us, I think, can agree that taxpayer funds should not be going to Planned Parenthood right now. So this program looks like it's going to cut about $260 million from their federal funding that they receive, which is a large chunk of what they get.
Yeah, so Planned Parenthood receives annually $500 million. And, my thing is with Planned Parenthood, Planned Parenthood has its own super PAC that they fund, where they, give money to candidates that support Planned Parenthood back. And, we've talked in the past, they've already said that they're willing to put up $50 million for these midterms with their super PAC fund. So if they have the money to put towards all these campaigns, I don't think that they need any sort of extra money. I think that they have too much money.
Yeah, definitely. And as long as people are going to freak out and talk about the Citizens United case, saying that, corporations can't be people, they shouldn't be able to, buy off candidates, the same thing would apply to Planned Parenthood in that regard. So anytime that you can cut money from an organization like that, definitely a good thing in my book. So I'm glad to see the Trump administration is doing that, and we will see where that goes from there.
Yeah, Planned Parenthood is a government agency that near exclusively funds Democratic candidates.
Oh, absolutely.
And how people can justify that, I don't know.
Well, they justify it like they justify everything else. Good for thee, but not for me. So, anyways, we should probably move on to the next story, and that is that Melania Trump underwent kidney surgery this week. On Monday, First Lady Melania Trump underwent kidney surgery at Walter Reed National Military Medical Center in Bethesda, Maryland, which is just outside of Washington, D.C. The kidney condition was described as benign, but still required medical attention. President Trump tweeted that Melania was in good spirits and that the procedure was successful. Melania Trump is now the first First Lady to undergo a serious medical procedure since Nancy Reagan had a mastectomy in October of 1987. So, this was kind of one of those things that happened earlier on in the week. She spent a few days in the hospital. I think it was just yesterday or the day prior that she returned to the White House. So, she looked like she was in good spirits. The doctors did a successful procedure, so we thank them for doing that. And I'm glad that they caught whatever, this benign thing was that was the kidney condition. So good to hear that she's doing well. And yeah, what do you have to say about that, Enzo?
It's just good that she's doing well. Moving on to something that I don't think is very good.
No, definitely not
here. Michael Bolton is threatening European nations with sanctions over the Iran deal withdrawal. The U.S. may put sanctions on European countries and companies that continue to do business with Iran after President Trump pulled out of the Iranian nuclear deal. Trump's national security advisor John Bolton said Sunday, quote, "Countries that continue to deal with Iran will face U.S. sanctions," Bolton said on ABC's This Week. Europeans are going to face the effective U.S. sanctions. They already are, really, because much of what they would like to sell to Iran involves U.S. technology for which the licenses will not be available. France, Britain, and Germany have said that they want to still preserve the deal, but Bolton insists that they would eventually change their minds. I think the Europeans will see that it's in their interest ultimately to go along with this, he said on CNN's State of the Union. Major European firms have been doing business in Iran since sanctions were lifted under the 2015 deal. Airbus, based in France, has been selling jets to Iranian airlines, and Germany's Volkswagen has been exporting cars to Iran. So, this is one of the things that I feared happening from the Iran withdrawal that we talked about last week. And it seems like, John Bolton, at least, is very committed towards putting sanctions on our own European allies for, not putting their own sanctions on Iran. And, if that happens, one, it hurts our relations, but two, it's going to economically hurt ourselves in the process by hurting our own trade. So I don't know. It just seems lose-lose across the board with doing such a thing.
Yeah, this seems like one of those things that they threaten but never actually end up doing anything, especially since he said that they could face sanctions and not actually will. I know that Germany, we talked about, I think, last week on the show, that Germany even said that some of their major companies were already going to stop doing some business with Iran, but they were just going to, stop doing that because of the Iran deal withdrawal. They didn't want to face any negative repercussions. So, as it goes on, I feel like France, Britain, Germany, they don't really have the negotiating power right now. It's the United States does. They want the U.S. back in the Iran deal. The Iran deal falls apart without the United States in it, whether or not France, Britain, and Germany want to actually admit that to themselves or not. So their economies would suffer if we were to put sanctions on them, and then it would hurt ours as well. So like I said, I don't feel like that's something that we're actually going to start putting sanctions on France, Britain, and Germany for not leaving the Iran deal, especially since we've already left it, and they can do whatever they want at that regard. We're definitely probably going to put more sanctions on Iran. I know we've already reinstated all the old sanctions that were on Iran, or at least we're in the process of reinstating those. So we'll see where things go from there, but yeah, this is one of those things I really don't feel like anything's actually going to come from it.
I mean, I hope so, but I don't know. This seems something that they've been adamant about, and they've talked about this a lot. It's not only been John Bolton, but there has been talks that the European Union itself is going to negotiate their own deal with Iran so that they can continue trade. So I don't know where things are going to go. We'll have to wait and see.
And if they want to do that, let them. It's not our business.
Yeah, it doesn't bother me any. Let's go on to the next thing, which is Gina Haspel's confirmation as CIA director this week.
Yeah. On Thursday, Gina Haspel was confirmed as CIA director, becoming the first woman to ever lead the agency. She was confirmed in the Senate in a 54-45 vote, with 6 Democrats supporting and 2 Republicans defecting. In case you were wondering, the 2 Republicans who said no was Rand Paul from Kentucky and Jeff Flake from Arizona. The 6 Democrats who said yes, most of them are from those states that Trump won, those Democrats that are up for re-election, including Joe Donnelly from Indiana, Joe Manchin from West Virginia, Heidi Heitkamp from North Dakota, Bill Nelson from Florida, Jan Shaheen from New Hampshire, and Mark Warner from Virginia. Now, Haspel faced a tough process regarding her past support for waterboarding and other possible forms of torture and enhanced interrogation. However, during her confirmation process, Senator Warner from Virginia said that he believes she is, quote, someone who can and will stand up to the president if ordered to do something illegal or immoral, like a return to torture. And, that's one of the biggest things that I didn't like about her was the whole torture thing. When it comes to waterboarding, I don't necessarily have a problem with that. But if you look at her past, she has not exactly been the most favorite person when it comes to other forms of enhanced interrogation. That was
I can give a couple examples of
go right
things
ahead.
that she's done. So, Gina Haspel participated in a torture program that involved beating an innocent pregnant woman's stomach, anally raping a man with meals for refusing to eat, and freezing a shackled prisoner to death. She has also personally wrote the order to destroy 92 tapes of CIA torture. So not only has she engaged in it, she's covered up a lot of torture in her career. And that's why, they've done the studies on the effectiveness on torture, and they find it doesn't, it's not effective, and it's actually, bad, because you'll just have people making false statements which can, end up costing American servicemen lives. So,
and that's happened
someone
before,
with
too.
and it has happened, which is why, someone with such a shady past and someone who is obviously willing to do very unethical things, it doesn't make me happy that they're CIA director.
No, it doesn't for me either. But the one thing that I do want to point out here is, going back to those 6 Democrats that voted for it, most of them were from states that Trump won who were up for re-election. Donnelly, Manchin, Heitkamp, and Nelson. And it still goes to show you that they are wanting to keep their jobs. They want to win re-election, and whether we as Trump supporters like Gina Haspel or we don't, still shows you that they believe that if they were to vote no, that would hurt their chances at re-election, because she is Trump's candidate, or however you want to word that
Who Trump selected.
yeah, it's who Trump wanted to be in that position. And so by putting a no vote on that, it shows that going against the president, which at least in their view hurts their chances at re-election. So, if anything, that's only the only good thing that come out of this, which is show that these people still believe that they stand significant chances at losing their re-election, and because of that, they are doing things that they normally wouldn't do with the rest of their party. So,
yeah. Let's go on now to the last of the top of the news, and that is Trump has donated his first quarter's salary to the Veterans Affairs.
Yes, President Trump has donated his first quarter 2018 salary to the Department of Veterans Affairs. The donation is being earmarked for their caregiver programs, including support for mental health and peer support, financial aid, education training, and research. White House Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders declared that, quote, President Trump is deeply committed to our veterans and is fighting for reform and accountability at the VA. Trump has previously donated his salary checks to the Department of the Interior, Department of Education, Department of Health and Human Services, and Department of Transportation in that order. So, this is a small little story, but it continues to go along with what we've been talking about in the past. Trump said he was going to donate his salary, and so far, every single quarter he has. So keeping that campaign promise, and hopefully the Veterans hopefully Veterans Affairs will be able to use that very, very well. So,
yeah, and the VA is actually one of the departments of the government that has seen the most reform since Trump has come into office. I know they passed the VA Accountability and Whistleblower Protection Act. I would have to say, about 6 months ago now.
That was near the beginning of his presidency. It wasn't too long after. It was almost more like about 10 months ago, I think.
Yeah, quite a while ago. But that has already shown to be very successful in getting rid of the individuals that shouldn't be there. So things are improving there. Let's move on now to some immigration news.
Open the door! Immigration!
La migra, vamos, niños!
This week in immigration.
So the first thing that we want to talk about with immigration is the biggest thing that happened in immigration this week, and that is Trump calling MS-13 members animals.
Yes. During a White House meeting on Wednesday, President Trump was asked a question about MS-13 gang violence by Fresno County Sheriff Margaret Mims. Mims asked, quote, there could be an MS-13 gang member I don't know about. If they don't reach a certain threshold, I cannot tell ICE about them. The president replied, you wouldn't believe how bad these people are. These aren't people, these are animals, and we are taking them out of the country at a level and a rate that's never happened before. Now, while Trump was clearly talking about MS-13, the liberal media immediately began freaking out, falsely claiming that Trump was referring to all immigrants as animals. CNN and C-SPAN even went so far as to post an edited clip of Trump's response to make it seem like he was doing just that. The C-SPAN video received more than 2.6 million views within the first 24 hours. This has happened many times before. Trump will say something that's absolutely completely right. They will take it out of context or edit it to make it look like he was saying something that he wouldn't. They would run with that story. Now, most people that are intelligent people that are intellectually honest know exactly what he was saying, whether or not they like him. But you have the media who will just post something up there, and I've seen many friends on my Facebook friends list that are liberals share an Occupy Democrats quote talking about how, Trump called all immigrants animals. See how racist he is. But no, it's absolutely not the case. In fact, he's accurate. MS-13, I barely consider these people human. They are animals. I mean, there's a story where, what they do, there was that one guy, I forget where it was, Las Vegas or something like that, where they beheaded the guy, stabbed him 20 times, and cut out his heart, okay? What human beings do that to someone, even if they are your rival? MS-13 is an extremely violent gang. What is their motto, Enzo? I think it's like rape, kill, torture, or something like that?
It's along those lines.
Yeah.
But
obviously,
the stuff that the manner in which that they kill their victims is particularly gruesome, though. There's another example of a killing that they've done, I forget where, to really send a point, everyone in the gang stuck the individual with the knife that left 100 knives in, the person they killed. Animals don't gruesomely kill their prey in such a manner as MS-13 oftentimes kills their victims. So, how you're supposed to defend MS-13 in any sort of fashion, I don't know. But for some odd reason, the media thought that this was a hill to die on to spin. And it didn't make sense. It directly hurts their credibility to do so. It just seems really dumb.
No, and I like the way that you've described that, because I've seen a lot of people describing that way. It's really, are you going to choose this as your hill to die on? Once, like I said, once normal, rational people who have intellectual honesty went out there and looked at the full quote that Trump was talking about, like I said, even if they don't like Trump, they can see exactly how it was being twisted by the media to be something that it wasn't. And it's amazing how these people essentially were trying to defend MS-13 simply because they hate Trump so much. If anything, that says more about them than it says about him, whether or not you think the president is a racist. But that being said, you and I both agree MS-13 gang members are animals. They are barely what you could describe as a human being. In fact, I saw a quote someone left on a YouTube video over like 2 years ago. It said, if you try to define what humanity is, you'll find out that a lot of what we consider humanity isn't human at all. And MS-13, as far as I'm concerned, clearly fits in with that. So, yeah, we named this title of this episode Animals for this reason, because these people are. And yet again, Trump has done absolutely nothing wrong. And if anything, I'm more so of a defender of him now than I was before, every single time they come after him for little comments like this, of which he is completely right about.
I've even seen people try to make the argument that Trump is, bringing up MS-13 as this, racial scapegoat, this fear-mongering, but you have to, admit there's a reality to MS-13 in this country, okay? We've reported in the past many times during the immigration segment on issues that they have with MS-13. In particular, Long Island has a ginormous issue with MS-13 at the moment. I believe it was just a couple weeks ago, there was informants that were infiltrating MS-13 that said that in New York State, they put out the hit on police officers in particular amongst their members. So it's like, I don't know how you defend them. You don't, but a lot of people somehow have this week.
And you can see just how much the Trump derangement syndrome sets in. I mean, there's a tweet that's been going around from Rob Rousseau, who's a writer for Vice. He said, quote, "I would rather my daughter dated a member of the MS-13 than a member of the Republican Party." Now, whether or not he was being sarcastic, he essentially was trying to, defend his own comment whenever people were like, "Yeah, you're right, that's right. Trump supporters are the worst. MS-13, yeah, they're so much better." But yeah,
which is an insane comment, and you think about it. Roughly 35 to 40% of the population considers itself Republican, and you consider those people all worse than MS-13.
Every time there is a shooting, they declare every member of the NRA a terrorist. And yet they'll say that, MS-13, you can't call those animals. Yet Trump supporters are berated, beaten in the streets, assaulted, threatened online, and, dehumanized, the word that they like to use, on a daily basis. And yet we one time call people animals who are animals. And you can't even say that MS-13, it's one thing if it was some gang that wasn't, as violent. MS-13 is one of the most violent and brutal gangs in the United States, in the world even. And so calling them animals is, you could call them much, much worse than that, and you'd still be absolutely right. So these people are absolutely insane. We say this time and time again, and it's hard to defend leftist ideology when their ideology is just go against everything Trump says and does. Because it seems like that's all it is anymore, at least in some regard.
And, the statement to go back on, I'd rather have my daughter date an MS-13 member than a member of the Republican Party. The members of MS-13 are not progressives. They're not like these socially enlightened people. They're just as regressive, if not more, than your average Republican.
I would
Okay.
say more so, because your average Republican's probably not going to kill you if you step out of line, whereas an MS-13 gang member probably would.
Yeah, I think, people, it's called normalcy bias. They attribute their values onto people that don't actually share their values. Okay, MS-13 is a gang that originates from El Salvador. They don't have the same level of social progress that we have in the United States. Okay, they are, extremely bigoted towards homosexuals. They are very sexist towards women. But, he still would rather have his daughter date an MS-13 member. It's strange.
Yeah. So, I don't know. I don't know how much longer you can keep dealing with people like that when that's all their response is.
No.
But anyways, I'm ready to move on to the next story.
Yeah, let's move on to this Sessions deal this week.
Yeah, so this is actually some really, really good news, and that's Sessions is ending a de facto form of court amnesty. On Thursday, Attorney General Jeff Sessions issued a directive to immigration judges telling them that they can no longer shunt deportation cases off onto permanent waiting lists, which would leave illegal aliens free to roam the United States. He issued a precedent telling judges to decide the cases in front of them rather than rely on administrative closure. The move, known as administrative closure, was a favorite of the Obama administration, who ordered DHS not to lodge deportation cases against illegal aliens who had low levels of criminal behavior and ordered immigration judges to close out their cases without deporting them when the circumstances warranted. Rather than pursue those cases, government attorneys would propose, and judges would then grant, administrative closure by shipping more than 215,000 cases to the suspension list between 2012 and 2017, and what analysts say became a de facto form of amnesty. Overall, more than 1 million cases currently await rulings. Now, they did say that...
So yeah, this is...
I was going to say, now what they did say, however, is that this is something that's more so going to be for newer cases because they don't want to open up all, 1 million cases immediately because that would create, more of a backlog than than immigration judges already currently have. But it's more so of we're just going to stop doing what we were doing in the past, and then in the future, we're not doing that anymore. But they do plan on opening up the cases as they can, but as of right now, this is one of those things where we're just stopping doing it in the future, and hopefully at some point we'll be able to get to those 1 million cases that are currently waiting rulings right now. So that's what I wanted to say. Go on.
Yeah. And this is one of the most crucial measures that has been long overdue. And, we were just talking, there's been over 215,000 cases of this. These are people that come here legally, get caught, get a court date, and then they're just delayed, so they just walk free. We don't even detain them. They just walk free.
Yeah,
we know that they're illegal, and they walk free.
It's like catch and release, but the court's version of catch and release. It's like, okay, you show up, and we're like, you know what? Instead of, deciding this case, we're just going to put you on this waiting list. Oh, and by the way, we're never going to get to you. Allowing you to walk free. You're not a serious country if you do that.
Yeah, and expecting them to just say, oh, well, I'll just sit here and wait on the waiting list until I get my court date to go back home. No, that's not how it works. They just skip town. They're undocumented people. You can't track them once they're gone.
Yeah, and so I'm very happy that we are ending that program. So,
yeah. Let's move on to some more good news, actually, in immigration this week. And that is ICE workplace enforcement has doubled last year's total already. Less than 7 months after U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement Deputy Director Thomas Homan issued a directive that called for increased worksite enforcement investigations to ensure U.S. businesses maintain a culture of compliance, the agency's Homeland Security investigations has already doubled the amount of ongoing worksite cases this fiscal year compared to the last fully completed fiscal year. From October 1st, 2017 through May 4th, 2018, HSI opened 3,510 worksite investigations, initially 2,282 I-9 audits and made 594 criminal and 610 administrative worksite-related arrests, respectively. In comparison, for fiscal year 2017, HSI opened 1,716 worksite investigations, initiated 1,360 I-9 audits, and made 139 criminal arrests and 172 administrative arrests related to worksite enforcement. Quote, our worksite enforcement strategy continues to focus on the criminal prosecution of employers who knowingly break the law and the use of I-9 audits and civil fines to encourage compliance with the law, said Acting Executive Director of HIS Derek Benner. HSI workplace enforcement investigations help combat work exploitation, illegal wages, child labor, and other illegal practices. So yeah, this is one of the things that we've talked about needs to be done, much more than it was done so in the past, and it looks like we're already seeing a lot of results.
Yeah, especially when you look at those numbers there. I mean, most of those were 2 to 5 times higher than the previous fiscal year. So, people, a lot of people complain about, are we doing enough? Well, we were already doing, from what this shows to be 2 to 5 times higher than we were doing prior. Would I like to see it higher? Absolutely, but there's only so much manpower you can deal with. I'm absolutely happy that they've, significantly increased the number of worksite enforcement investigations going on now. So that's some very, very good news.
Yeah, and this is one of the things that illegal aliens fear the most, worksite raids. It's why in California's sanctuary state law, they put in provisions to prevent workplace enforcement. Not that ICE has honored that law at all, and that, they're actually targeting it because of that. But, the fiscal year's not even over, and in most cases double, if not more so. It's very promising.
Yeah, and the fiscal year goes to the end of September, so we've got many, many more months to go for that.
Yeah. Let's move on to the next thing, though, and I wanted to talk about some legislation that was introduced this week. Democrats are legislatively going after Homeland Security. Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, a Democrat from New York, who's also potentially one of the nominees for 2020, has introduced legislation titled the Department of Homeland Security Accountability and Transparency Act, which would tie up Border Patrol and ICE agents in regulatory tape, forcing them to document every single time they stop or question suspected illegal aliens and border crossers. The law would likely slow Border Patrol and ICE agents down from enforcing current immigration laws. Gillibrand's legislation would mandate Border Patrol and ICE to document the date, time, place, and reason for each time agents stop and question a suspected illegal alien. Already, because of the booming illegal alien population and a spike in border crossings, Border Patrol and ICE agents are bogged down with trying to not only prevent more illegal immigration, but also deport illegal aliens living throughout the U.S., and this legislation would make it even harder to do so.
Yeah, so, thank God the Democrats don't have control of the Senate right now because, as cucky as Republicans tend to be, I don't see them voting for this legislation. But it just goes to show you that they're getting this stuff out there so that if they ever do take control of the Senate or are able to get enough votes for it, they're going to try to pass all of these things, and they're going to do it immediately. So that just shows you how important it is to make sure that these people don't retain power in the future. Because we definitely don't want to see something like this go into effect.
Yeah, it's important to highlight what they want, because if they ever get power, they're going to try these measures. And, if they have to stop every single illegal alien that tries to cross at the border, and they have to, write down and document every single interaction that they have, these are, these border agents in particular, they're coming across thousands of individuals. Okay, you don't have the time to go through all of this documentation and still stop people from crossing the border. We already can't stop, everyone crossing the border as it is.
Yeah, and say you suspect someone who you think is an illegal immigrant who turns out, oh wait, they actually are legal and they're allowed to be here. it's like, okay, so say you pull a guy over and you're talking to him for like 5 minutes. You then have to go back to your office, file the paperwork, write down every single person that was on your crew at the time that it happened, where you were, all these different descriptions. That takes so much extra effort. And like, what are you going to do with this stuff? You're just going to like throw it in a file folder, put it on a flash drive or something? There's no reason to be keeping all that information. The chances of you actually needing it for anything is slim to none, probably 1 in a million. It literally exists just to give them more red tape and make them have to waste their time and not enforce immigration law. That is the only point to this entire law to begin with.
Yeah.
Or at least, this bill that was introduced by Kirsten Gillibrand.
Yeah. Let's go on to the last story, though, that we have for immigration this week before we talk some 2018 election news. And this is related to elections, so it ties in well. And that is a Mexican woman steals an ID to vote in Texas. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton, who is someone we both met before, announced Monday he will prosecute a Mexican woman charged with stealing an American citizen's identity and then using it to cast ballots in 3 presidential elections. Laura Janeth Garza was spotted after the American woman went to get a passport only to have the State Department discover Miss Garza had already gotten one in her identity. Federal officials alerted Texas, which conducted a probe and found that Miss Garza illegally registered and casted ballots in 2004, 2012, and 2016. She is being charged with 2 counts of illegal voting, both stemming from the 2016 election, according to indictments filed last week in Montgomery County, which is north of Houston, if you don't know Texas. One charge is for knowingly voting in an election she was not eligible for, and the other charge is for impersonating someone else, in this case a woman named Angie Yandira Zamora. If convicted, she faces up to 20 years in prison.
I'd rather see her just, deported and, or something worse than that. But yeah, they talk about, voter fraud doesn't exist. Here's an example directly of voter fraud that has happened where someone did vote 3 different presidential elections. Okay. This stuff exists and it's bad. And I'm glad that we arrest these people, and we need to make sure that this stuff continues to be enforced so it can't continue to happen.
And, it brings highlight to issues that the leftists don't want to talk about, which is identity theft is a very, very common crime amongst illegal aliens. Not always for the purpose of voting, but definitely for the purpose of securing employment and securing welfare benefits.
And not only that, but one of the things that can be inferred from this, but's actually true, is a lot of that identity theft problems affects Hispanic Americans, because when these people are stealing identities, they're not stealing the identity of Bob Smith, they're stealing the identity of, Jose Cortez down the street, who is a legal U.S. citizen, who was born in the United States. And so that does cause a lot of problems within the Hispanic communities inside the United States. They're really affected by this a lot. So, it's just one of those things that I like pointing out when people bring it up.
Yeah, there is literally millions of cases of illegal aliens engaging in, identity theft. And, sometimes they're taking the identities of children. They're destroying their credit and destroying their potential of having, a solid future because they want to be in this country illegally and exploit our citizens in the process. It's very disgusting. And hopefully this woman is convicted because, they say voter fraud doesn't happen, but she casted ballots in 3 elections.
Yeah.
like she was so discouraged from voting that she tried it multiple times.
Yeah, I'm surprised why she didn't vote in 2008.
And, they bring up the argument of, there's so few instances of, these convictions happening. And, Texas, we have voter ID laws. But, for example, places that don't have voter ID laws, where is Eric Holder from?
I want to say New York.
Yeah,
I'll Google it real
New
quick.
York. Yeah. Because I remember Project Veritas had a video where they had someone go to Eric Holder's precinct, and they claimed to be Eric Holder, and they gave him the ballot.
Jesus.
And because they have no voter ID laws there, there's no way to confirm it. Even someone who, like Eric Holder is a pretty prominent individual, you think that people would at least know what he looks like, you can just get away with it. If there is no system to even catch, voter fraud in the form of voter IDs, there's no way you're going to catch anyone for the crime to begin with. You think about shoplifting. They say on average you only catch one shoplifter for every 50 infractions. But at least in the case of shoplifting, you're looking for it.
Right.
In the case of elections, there's no way to catch it if there's no voter IDs whatsoever.
Yeah, and so even if, say that we do take that whole 1 in 50 thing, we've talked about how many cases on this show of voter fraud cases that have, been convicted. We probably talk about one every couple of weeks. And that's just the ones that we talk about. There's so many that we don't talk about. You multiply that by 50, and all of a sudden you can see how there's, maybe over 1 million illegal votes that get cast in an election. It's extremely possible, especially when you have states like California and New York, where it's extremely laxed on their voting laws, and where people who do steal others' identities are easily able to get away with it and then vote.
Yeah. So it is a major problem, and here's an example of a woman doing it just recently here in Texas, if you actually need some evidence of it happening. But with that said, let's talk about some elections, Bobby.
So, getting into this week's primaries, we have a few. First off, there's the Texas runoff election. Then we also have primaries in Arkansas, Kentucky, and Georgia. But since we're in Texas, I figured we'd start off with Texas. The actual Texas primary was held back in March. It was held on March 6th. I voted in it. I think you did as well. Did you vote in the primary?
No, because I was working in Plano
for an
election,
right.
So I couldn't vote there.
Well, anyways, so going directly into it, we're just going to cover a few runoff primary races that are going to be important, at least, for people that live in Texas. First off is the gubernatorial election on the Democrat side. Now, on the Republican side, Greg Abbott got like 90% of the vote. He's the incumbent Republican governor that we have. We both support him. He's going to be on the ticket in November. But the two people on the Democrat side that are heading to the runoff is Lupe Valdez and Andrew White. Now, Lupe Valdez received 43% of the vote in the primary, or at least in the Democrat primary. She also won most of the vote everywhere in the state except for the greater Houston area. So that shows you where Andrew White is most popular and where she's most popular. Now, if you don't know who Lupe Valdez is, she's the Dallas County Sheriff. She's been Dallas County Sheriff since 2005, but she resigned in order to run for governor. She's also a U.S. Army veteran, and she's also probably going to win it because she's currently trading, as of this morning, at 89 cents on PredictIt. Like I said, I've been using PredictIt to try to judge at least who people believe are going to win these different races. And so the fact that she's at 89 cents out of $1 shows people are pretty sure she's going to end up winning this thing. Now, Andrew White, he only received 27% of the vote, came in second. He won most of the vote in the greater Houston area, but didn't really win it very much anywhere else in the state. He's only trading at 15 cents on PredictIt, so he's probably not going to win. But in case you're wondering who he is, he owns a warranty company. So those are the two people that, one of which Greg Abbott will face against in the general election, probably going to be Lupe Valdez. So if you're a Texas voter, make sure you know who our governor is going to be facing. Now, moving on to a couple of House district races. First off, we have House District 6, which is an open primary to replace retiring U.S. Representative Joe Barton. The two people in the Republican primary is Ron Wright and Jake Ellzey. Now, Ron Wright is currently trading at 92 cents on PredictIt, so he's probably going to win. He has been endorsed by Senator Ted Cruz. He received 45.1% of the vote in the March 6th primary, so he almost won the thing right out. He's the Tarrant County tax assessor collector and he also resigned from his position to run for the House. Tarrant County, if you don't know, is up where Fort Worth, Texas is. Now, his opponent is Jake Elzy, who received 21.8% of the vote in the primary. He's a former U.S. Navy pilot, promises to only serve 5 terms, so I guess you could say he supports term limits. He's been endorsed by former Texas Governor Rick Perry. So you got 2 popular people in Texas that have endorsed different candidates here. But he's only trading at 9 cents on Predictor right now, so he's probably not going to win. And Ron Wright is probably going to win that district in the runoff election. Now, that is a R+9 district, so Ron Wright is probably going to end up then winning in the general election, becoming the next representative for District 6. Now, on the Democrat side, there is also a runoff election in this district, and the first person is Ruby Faye Woolridge. Now, I will say that Predicted did not have a Democrat primary listed for this race, even though it is going to a runoff election, but I am going to say it just because the Republican one has it. The first one is Ruby Faye Woolridge. She received 36.9% of the vote in the primary. She finished first by only 19 votes out of 29,400 votes that were cast. Okay, so she barely came in first place. She currently works as the vice president at the Arlington NAACP chapter, and she is also a minister. She ran for the House in 2016, but lost in the general in this district. So hopefully, if you're Democrats, you will make the same mistake again and put her up there so she can lose twice in a row. Now, her opponent received, again, 36.9% of the vote, this time only losing by 19 votes out of 29,400 cast, and that is Jana Lynn Sanchez. Now, if you're wondering who she is, she works at Rice University as an administrator. So one of those 2 people will go on to face either Ron Wright or Jake Elzy in the general election. Hopefully, it'll be Ruby Faye Woolridge so she can lose twice in a row, and hopefully, at least as far as I'm concerned, it will be Ron Wright. That way we can have a representative, Ron Wright. But it looks like he's going to end up winning it anyways. So that is for House District 6. Now, I'll go pretty quickly through the next 2 districts. First off, we have House District 7. The winner of the Democrat primary runoff will face Republican U.S. Representative John Culberson, who's the incumbent in the general election. Now, first off, for the Democrat primary is Lizzie Fletcher. She received 29.3% of the vote in the primary. She's an attorney. She also co-founded Planned Parenthood Young Leaders in 2000. Again, what we talked about earlier in the show about Planned Parenthood being very political. She's also been endorsed by Emily's List. She's trading at 85 cents on Predictor right now, so she's probably going to end up winning that Democrat primary runoff. Now, the person she's facing against is Laura Moser, who received 24.4% of the vote, and she is a writer for the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, and Slate. She has been endorsed by Our Revolution, which is a Bernie Sanders-linked organization that likes to endorse progressive liberals across the country. She, thankfully, is only trading at 15 cents, so she's probably not going to win that race there. So that's an R+7 district, so, even if there is some sort of blue wave, highly unlikely Democrats will win that district against the Republican candidate. Now, the next district is the district that you and I have been following very closely, and that is District 21. The 2 people that have made it to the District 21 runoff for the Republican side is Chip Roy and Matt McCall. Now, Chip Roy, I have met him. I went to a rally of his. That's where I got to meet Ted Cruz a couple of months ago. He received in this race, remember, there were 18 Republicans that were running in this race. Now, he received 27.1% of the vote in the primary. He's Ted Cruz's former chief of staff, and, has been endorsed also by Ted Cruz. The moment that Ted Cruz came out and gave him his endorsement, pretty much shot his chances up to winning to almost 100%. He's currently trading at 91 cents on Predicted, so let's face it, he's going to win this thing. But the person who's probably going to lose is Matt McCall. He received 16.9% of the vote. Now, this is one of those guys who it seems like his job is just running and losing in elections. He ran for the U.S. House in 2014 and 2016. In this race, lost in the primary both times. So it looks like he's going to lose 3 primaries in a row. He's only trading at 6 cents on Predicted, so probably not going to win. Now, on the Democrat side for District 21, we have Mary Wilson, who is a pastor and a teacher. She only received 30.9% of the vote in the primary. Her opponent is Joseph Kopser, who received 29% of the vote in the primary. He's a U.S. Army veteran and also a West Point grad. There is not a predicted race for the Democrat side on this, but it could be, it's extremely too close to call on their side. They finished within 1% of each other in the Democrats. So one of those two, probably going to be Mary Wilson, though. But, I can't really tell who I would choose between the Democrats there. But hopefully...
If you don't... I was going to say, if you don't know where District 21 is, it's part of San Marcos, Texas, downwards encompassing New Braunfels, and getting down to northern San Antonio.
It actually extends into San Antonio a little bit, and I know that because I've seen like campaign signs that are down there, and it stretches all across the Texas Hill Country, north of San Antonio and west of Austin. So it's a lot of just open, like hill land and stuff. So it's a pretty Republican district. Lamar Smith is the incumbent Republican who said he wasn't going to seek re-election for that district. He's been in office for like 25 something years, so it's time for him to go. But I've personally, myself, I endorse Chip Roy, so I certainly hope that he wins the primary runoff, and then he'll probably go on to win that race in November as well. So
yeah, which will be great.
Yeah. But moving on to the final district that we want to cover in Texas before we move to some other states, and that is House District 23. If you don't know where House District 23 is, it is in western Texas. If you look at a map, you'll see El Paso is way on like the western tip there. Go about, 50 or so miles, and then you'll see just giant like open desert land. House District 23 encompasses most of that area. But we're going to be talking about the Democrat primary. The winner of the Democrat primary will face incumbent Republican U.S. Representative Will Hurd in the general election. Now, if there's any race in Texas that could flip from red to blue, it would be this one. It's only an R+1 district. It's kind of gone back and forth between Democrat, Republican a couple of times in recent years. So if there is some sort of blue wave that hits, although it looks like that's going to be ever unlikely, it would be this race. Now, on the Democrat side, Gina Ortiz Jones received 41.3% of the vote in the primary. She's an Air Force veteran and has been endorsed by former Texas State Senator and 2014 Democrat nominee for Texas Governor Wendy Davis, as well as Emily's List. Now, if you want to know how much a likelihood is that Gina Ortiz Jones is going to win, she is currently trading at 97 cents unpredicted, so extremely likely that she will face Will Hurd in the election. Now, her primary opponent is Rick Trevino. He received only 17.5% of the vote in the primary, so significantly less than she did. He is the secretary of the Bexar County Democratic primary. He was also a Bernie Sanders delegate at the 2016 DNC. He has been endorsed by Justice Democrats and Our Revolution. If you don't know who Justice Democrats is an organization that endorses candidates. I think it was started by Cenk Unger over at the Young Turks, I believe, is the one who started that. So, you can see exactly the type of people that he is endorsing there. So I don't like it when Bernie type of people win in elections, even if that means, losing to, I guess I could say, more sane type of Democrats. Even if it's Democrats I don't like, I just don't like progressives winning in primaries. So he's only trading at 3 cents right now, so he's very unlikely to win that election, which is, good for me, because if you're going to have a Democrat win something, it might as well be a more centrist type Democrat rather than someone who's extremely far left.
Yeah, Will Hurd, if you don't know, he, for one, opposes building a border wall. And 2, he supports Amnesty. He was actually one of the signers on for that attempted Queen of the Hill procedure they tried doing last week, which didn't go anywhere.
Yeah, I really don't like Will Hurd. He's one of my he's of the Texas Republicans that are in the House, he's my least favorite. Of all the Republicans in my House, he's definitely my top 10 least favorite. So if he were to lose, it's not like it's going to change that district very much. Obviously, as a Republican, I want him to maintain just for the numbers. But that being said, as long as this Rick Trevino guy loses, which it looks like he's going to do, we're in better shape than we would be if he would win, I'll tell you that. So, do you have anything else to say about these Texas races, or do you want to move on to the next state?
No, let's move on.
Okay, so next up we have the Arkansas primary. Now, they do not have any Senate race that's going on right now. There's one House race and then the governor race that we'll cover. So first off is the governor. Now, Arkansas is an R+15 state, so very low chance that a Democrat's actually going to win. First off, in the Republican primary, we have incumbent Republican Governor Asa Hutchinson, who is the former Undersecretary of Homeland Security from 2003 to 2005. He's the former administrator of the Drug Enforcement Agency from 2001 to 2003. He was also a former U.S. representative from 1996 to 2002. He was also a bound-by-law Marco Rubio delegate at the 2016 RNC. Now, to tell you how much he is actually going to win this race by, the person who is his primary opponent, I literally have also running, meaning there's just very little information on this person, and it doesn't matter. So he's going to win that primary. And on the Democrat side, it's literally two also runnings that are facing each other. That's Jared Henderson and Letitia Sanders. So, one of those two is going to end up winning the Democrat primary there, but they're not going to win in November, at least for Arkansas governor. Now, in House District 2 of Arkansas is an R+7 district. The Republican primary has incumbent
House District 2, just to preface, is the district that Little Rock, Arkansas is in.
Okay, thank you for letting everyone know that. So that's important to
I actually
consider
knew that
this.
off the top of my head.
Thanks, Enzo.
No, it's like 4 House districts. So.
Yeah, Arkansas is one of those states where it's pretty... Yeah. Anyways, on the Republican side, we have French Hill, who's the incumbent Republican representative. He's running unopposed in his primary, so obviously he's going to win and then go to November. But the three people that are pointing out on the Democrat side is, first off, Clark Tucker. He is an Arkansas state representative since 2015. He's also a lawyer, and he's trading at 89 cents on Predicted. So he's probably going to be the guy that wins that Democrat primary. But he is facing Paul Spencer, who I couldn't find any information on, but Paul Spencer's trading at 9 cents on Predicted. And thirdly, we have Gwen Combs, who is a U.S. Air Force veteran, trading at only 5 cents on Predicted. So looks like Clark Tucker is going to end up being that person. There's also one more guy running, but no one really cares about him. So R+7 district, Republicans most likely going to win that. So before we move on to the next state, that's all we have for Arkansas. You ready to go to Kentucky?
Yeah.
Okay, so Kentucky, there is no governor race and no Senate race, so there's only one House race that we get to cover in Kentucky, and that is House District 6. Now, House District 6 is an R+9 district, and we want to say a little thing about this before we talk about the candidates, and that is that Trump won this district by 15 points. However, the incumbent Republican representative is Andy Barr, and polls have showed that he has not been too popular within his district, so it's possible that this is a vulnerable district, and which is why we're covering it here. Andy Barr is the incumbent Republican. He's running against an also running person who doesn't really have any information, so it looks like Andy Barr is going to then go on and face whoever the Democrat is in November, so we're hoping that he's able to win his district, even though for, inter-district reasons, he's become slightly unpopular with his constituents there. But on
District 6 is where the capital of Kentucky is, Frankfort.
Yeah,
it also has Lexington and Richmond. And
it's important to point out in this district that Lexington, Kentucky is the only major city in this district, but this district also encompasses a large amount of rural areas. Now, Lexington, Kentucky is one of the few places in Kentucky that actually votes Democrat, but because this district encompasses so much more rural area, is why it's R+9. So, in November, when you see results tickling in, if it shows that the Democrat is winning in this district at the beginning, don't think that all hope is lost. Wait for the rural vote to come in, which normally staggers and takes a while. But yeah, Republicans probably going to win this. Anyways, to talk about the 4 Democrats that we want to say here. First off is Amy McGrath. She's trading at 55 cents on Predicted. So, obviously the front runner, but not by too much, and it could go to any one of these people here. But Amy McGrath is a U.S. Marine Corps veteran, reached the rank of lieutenant colonel. She worked as the Pentagon's Marine Corps liaison to other federal agencies, then went on to work at the U.S. Naval Academy. So at least she has a lot of military experience with her. She also wants to legalize medical marijuana, and that sounds like a good thing, at least I think so, but she supports gun control strongly, which is something that I do not like. So hopefully she loses in November, because it looks like she's going to win her primary. But she has been endorsed by U.S. Representative Seth Moulton, who is a Democrat from Massachusetts. Now, in second place, trading at 33 cents on Predicted, is Jim Gray. Now, If you don't know who Jim Gray is, he was the Democrat nominee against Rand Paul for U.S. Senate in 2016, and in this district, he actually won the vote in that district over Rand Paul. So that's why this is a district that looks like it's very vulnerable towards Andy Barr here. And why it also looks like it might be favorable for Jim Gray. He is the current mayor of Lexington, Kentucky as well, and he's been so since 2011. So when you have the mayor of your big city running in the district that encompasses that big city, you can see why, although he's only trading at 33 cents, he might be undervalued there, and it's a possibility he might go on to actually win that primary. And if he ends up being the nominee for the Democrats, I hate to say it, but I think Andy Barr might end up losing that race because Jim Gray won that district in 2016 over Rand Paul, which proves that Democrat Jim Gray can actually win that district. So for that reason alone, I hope he loses the Democrat primary. But if you don't know also who he is, he's also the CEO of a billion-dollar construction company, so he's got the money in this race right now. Now, there's two more people that are running in this district that are not listed on Predicted, but also stand a chance of actually, doing something. And that is Reggie Thomas, who is a Kentucky state senator, and Jeff Young, who is a guy who, also seems to just run and lose elections for a living. He ran for the U.S. House in 2014 and 2016, losing in the primary both times, and also ran for Kentucky governor in 2015, again, losing in the primary. So it looks like he's going to have 4 primary losses on his belt. Now, that's really all we have to say about Kentucky right now, unless you have anything you want to say about that race before we go on to Georgia.
No.
Okay. So going on to Georgia, there's actually quite a bit here in Georgia. We really only have to talk about the governor race because there's no Senate race, and there's really no House races in Georgia that are worth watching right now. But in terms of the governor race, Georgia is an R+5 district, which means, Republicans are favored to win, but it looks like it's time to get pretty close. Now, current Republican Governor Nathan Deal will not seek re-election because of term limits. So technically speaking, this is an open primary for the Georgia governorship. Now, in first place in the Republican primary, trading at 90 cents, is Casey Cagle. Now, Casey Cagle is the current Georgia lieutenant governor, so it looks like, lieutenant governor is going to go on to get elected governor, so he's probably going to win it. He's also a former Georgia state senator. He also led the Georgia plan in February, if you remember this, to block the Delta Airlines tax break after they severed ties with the NRA. So you remember that story, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he has also been endorsed by the NRA. He was endorsed by the NRA before that, but, just goes to show you that if you remember that story, he's the guy who did that, so he's probably going to end up winning the Republican primary. But in second place, trading at 14 cents on Predicted, is Brian Kemp. Brian Kemp is the Georgia Secretary of State, who is also a former Georgia state senator. He owns a small real estate company, and he has been endorsed by Grant Thornton CEO Jim Brady and 2008 Libertarian presidential candidate Bob Barr. So, yeah, got them Libertarians running in the Republican primary again. Now, there are 3 more people that we want to talk about. None of them are listed on Predicted, which is really unfortunate because I'd like to see at least one of these guys listed, especially since it looks like it might be a closer race than people actually think. First off is Hunter Hill. Now, Hunter Hill is the former Georgia state senator, and he also resigned to run for governor. He's the U.S. Army Ranger, did 2 tours in Iraq and Afghanistan, also a West Point graduate. He wants to eliminate the Georgia state income tax. He's also been endorsed by Senator Ted Cruz. So those 3 things alone, I would think would make him a little bit more popular than, would seem. So I don't know why Predicted doesn't have them listed, but don't underestimate Hunter Hill in this race, just saying. But the next person is Clay Tippins. Clay Tippins is a former Navy SEAL. He has been endorsed by former RNC chairman and former Mississippi Governor Haley Barbour. That's really all I could find out about him. Now, this last person that we want to talk about, we had an article that we wanted to talk about him, and I know you know exactly who this is, Enzo. And this is Michael Williams. Michael Williams is a Georgia state senator. He was also the co-chair of Trump's Georgia campaign. He has been endorsed by Roger Stone and Dog the Bounty Hunter. And he also wants to round up illegal aliens in this truck, doesn't he, Enzo?
So, he not only wants to round up personal illegal aliens with his truck, he started his own, tour of Georgia with a deportation bus, and he's been just going around in a bus, that's marked deportation, and it's funny. I mean, he's a long shot for winning the governorship, but he's drawing attention to himself at least.
Yeah, and when you have long shots, that's why I wish these people were at least on Predicted, so I could see if their popularity has spiked at all. Because obviously this guy's popularity has spiked ever since that ad came out. I've seen a lot of people talking about him. Granted, he's probably not going to win the Republican primary, but I wouldn't be surprised if he gets a lot more vote than people expect, simply because of that. Now, I will say that I feel like as a Republican wanting, Republican-led states to actually do well, I would have to favor Casey Cagle in this race simply because he's the lieutenant governor of Georgia. He knows the most about the state. He knows how to run the state. He's been the lieutenant governor since 2007, okay? That's over 10 years now. So I feel like he'd probably be best at running the state, but if I had to choose someone that wasn't him, I'd probably want that Michael Williams guy just for, the shits and giggles of it.
Yeah.
But anyways, that's the Republican primary for Georgia. Now, moving on, we're just going to go over the Democrat primary for Georgia governor, and then we're done talking about 2018 elections. So, first things first, we have Stacey Abrams. She is a former Georgia state representative who also resigned to run for governor. She served as Georgia House Minority Leader from 2011 to 2017, so she's very well aware of, Georgia state politics, especially from the Democrat side. So don't underestimate these people either. Now, there is not a predicted race for the Democrat primary here, but I have a feeling she's going to win because she's actually polling at 33% right now, which sounds low, but the next person is polling at 15%, and I'll get to that here in a second. But the thing I want to point out about Stacey Abrams, if you don't know who she is, she's a black female. She's actually running a racially focused campaign focusing solely on black voters and white liberals that live in Atlanta. Now, we talk about, how people on the right, people on the left, especially people on the left, are trying to, push racially based politics and identity politics. She's open about the fact that she is strictly running a racially based campaign, trying to win solely by getting black voters and white liberals out to vote in Atlanta. And don't be surprised if you see a lot more candidates going forward if she's any way successful at all about doing this. Now, she has been endorsed by 3 U.S. representatives from Georgia. John Lewis, if you don't know who that is, he's, one of the oldest serving Democrats that's in the House on the Congressional Black Caucus. Pain in the ass to us this entire time. She's also been endorsed by Hank Johnson, David Scott. Again, those are all U.S. representatives from Georgia. She's also been endorsed by U.S. Senator Kamala Harris from California and Senator Cory Booker from New Jersey, both Democrats. She's also been endorsed by Wendy Davis, as we said earlier. She's been endorsed by Planned Parenthood, MoveOn.org, and Emily's List. So she's got a lot of the endorsements on the list. She's polling in the lead, so it looks like she's going to end up being the Democrat nominee for that race, and I therefore really want the Republican candidate to win because of that. Now, her primary opponent...
All the worst of the worst endorsements, too.
Yeah, exactly. And now, her primary opponent is Stacey Evans, who is a former Georgia state representative who also resigned to run for governor. So you got 2 former Georgia state reps that resigned in order to run for this race. She is an attorney, and she has been endorsed by former Georgia Governor Roy Barnes, but she is only polling at 15%, so it looks like Stacey Abrams is going to be the Democrat nominee in that race. And if so, then, expect to see that racially focused campaign really spread across the entire state of Georgia. And if that thing can get successful at all, then it looks like identity politics and racially based RAND campaigns might be a thing of the future, which could be good or could be bad, depending on who runs it and why.
Yeah. But you mentioned that Stacey Abrams is endorsed by MoveOn.org?
Yes.
That is, if people are unaware, that is a George Soros PAC that dumps a lot of money into races.
And also, I mentioned Emily's List as well. We mentioned there's that candidate in that one Texas race that was also endorsed by Emily's List. Emily's List is an organization that kind of goes around endorsing female Democrat candidates. That's, in a nutshell what they do, even though they are pretty progressive as well.
Yeah.
So that's
with
really...
that said, though, oh, I'm sorry, I cut you off.
No, I was going to say that's really all we have for the primaries that are running up this week. So if you live in any of those states, hopefully you you paid it a little bit of attention and you've already done your research and get out to vote. Republicans did pretty well last week in the primaries and the week before that. So let's continue this trend and let's show the Democrats that there ain't going to be a blue wave and we're going to actually get out to vote. So
yeah. With that said, though, let's get into some of the bottom of the stack national news. And the first 2 things that we have to talk about are shootings.
Yes, the first things first, I think we all knew this was coming, and that is the most recent school shooting that's happened, this time in Texas. In the nation's latest mass school shooting on Friday, a 17-year-old boy named Dimitrios Pagortsis walked into an art classroom at Santa Fe High School in Santa Fe, Texas, which is about 30 miles southeast of Houston, and began open firing, killing 10 people, which was 8 students and 2 teachers, as well as injuring 10 others. He was armed with a sawed-off shotgun, a revolver, and non-functioning pipe bombs. Pagortsis was arrested and taken into custody, and a second suspect was also detained for further questioning, although I haven't heard any more updates about that second suspect that was detained. So have you heard anything about that second suspect at all?
No.
Me neither, so I'm not really sure what's going on with that, but we do know that one was detained. Survivors reported that he began yelling "woohoo" as he was firing and was possibly targeting a girl that had denied his advances over recent months. Pagortsis was dressed in a trench coat that had both communist hammer and sickle pins as well as an iron cross. A famous image of him also shows him wearing a beanie with a bisexual heart pin on it as well. Other images show him being a possible Satanist. One image is a t-shirt of his with the words "Born to Kill" written on it. He also had a lot of pictures of like guns and stuff too.
Knives.
Yeah, and knives, all that sort of stuff. Really did fit the profile for someone to look like they might do this type of thing. At least, if you compare that to other cases that we've seen recently. Now, the only thing that I will say, moving on, is this last bullet point that I have here. Houston Texans star J.J. Watt has offered to pay for the funeral expenses of all of the victims. So, J.J. Watt, yet again, showing that he is a class act. And if you remember, J.J. Watt, during Hurricane Harvey, he raised over $36 million for cleanup efforts. So, he is a guy who loves Houston, he loves the area, he loves the people, and he's an all-around great guy. But, it's sad to see that we have yet another school shooting that could have been prevented if people would have seen these red flags that happened prior. And, this just happened a couple of days ago, and it seems like outside of the people that are extremely focused on gun control, this has already been memory hold. And the reason why it's been memory hold already is because of the fact that he did not use an AR-15. He didn't use a rifle at all. The guy was 17 years old, okay? So you can't even own a gun at all if you're 17 years old. You got to be 18 to own rifles and shotguns, 21 to own pistols. So number one, he has a shot-off shotgun, which is illegal to do. He has a revolver, which he wasn't legally allowed to own because he's not, he's not 21. And a revolver is not even semi-automatic, okay? You got to physically pull the thing back. All right, and so he also had 9 non-functional pipe bombs. Thank God they were non-functional. He could have done a lot more damage. How in the world did this kid learn to make pipe bombs and get the materials for it? I have no idea. But it's just unfortunate that we have to continue going through these stupid school shootings. It seems like almost every couple of weeks now, and I'm sick and tired of this stuff, dude. I really, really am.
Yeah. And, the gun control advocates, especially after Parkland, Parkland heated it up to a whole different degree of just heat. But, they're out in force online right now with this shooting, but it just doesn't make sense because none of the measures they're proposing would have prevented, this individual from doing this attack. He didn't use even semi-automatic weapons to do so.
Ready to move on to the next story then? Unless you have anything more that you wanted to say about it, sorry.
Just, I don't know, the stuff that gun control advocates are advocating for right now wouldn't have prevented this shooting. They just want to take away guns from people that aren't committing crimes because someone committed a crime with a gun. And, it's stupid.
Yeah. But, moving on to the next shooting that we had, luckily in this one, no good people were severely injured in this, but a man shouting some anti-Trump slogans shot up a Trump golf resort. An armed man walked into the Trump National Doral Golf Resort in Doral, Florida at 1:30 a.m. on Friday morning, placed an American flag over the counter, pointed a handgun at employees, and began shouting anti-Trump rhetoric, pulling a fire alarm, and started shooting. The shooter has been identified as 42-year-old Doral resident Jonathan Audie. He was stopped by 5 police officers who began a shootout with Audie, hitting his legs and then tackling him and arresting him. Audie now faces charges of attempted murder. The only reported injury at all was a police officer who may have suffered a broken wrist during the takedown. I haven't seen any follow-up to see if that officer was actually broken a wrist or not, but that's the only reported injury that might have come from this, thank God. But we actually know a little bit more about Audie now. We know that he was an immigrant from South Africa who became a U.S. citizen less than a year ago and also worked as a fitness instructor and a former stripper who actually once did a porn video. So it's like, okay, this guy's a really weird guy. However, as much as it seems like he hated Trump by shouting all this rhetoric, Instagram posts show he did actually like Melania Trump, but he didn't like Donald. So, it's one of those cases where his friends are like, I could never have seen him doing something like this. He's not that type of person. I don't know what caused him to do this. I don't know what caused the guy to do it either, yet the fact is he did it. He felt like going into a freaking golf course at 1:30 in the morning and shooting at stuff. Very odd, very strange story. Thank God no one was hurt besides that police officer who may have suffered a broken wrist. And hopefully that police officer's okay. But yeah, this dude, I don't know what caused this guy to snap, but, it's definitely something worth looking out at. The Trump derangement syndrome is getting worse as people are getting more violent.
Yeah, and this story was, very... It wasn't played up much with, the severity of the Santa Fe incident.
Because it happened earlier that morning.
Yeah. No, yeah, I remember it happening, the same day. But, yeah, it just doesn't really work well into a leftist narrative when it's, in a sense, leftist in a mass shooting.
Yeah, exactly. So, I don't know. I'm getting tired of mass shootings in this country, dude. I really am. But you ready to move on to the next story, then?
Yeah. So, the next thing that we wanted to talk about, which is just kind of a quick thing, is actually in regards to the Mueller probe. And that is, Mueller indicted a company that didn't actually exist. So, Concord Catering, one of the Russian companies that the Mueller probe indicted, has turned out to not exist during the time period alleged in the probe. Concord Catering was one of the 3 companies indicted for allegedly supporting a conspiracy to help President Donald Trump win the 2016 election. So, we talk about every single week the, legitimacy of the Mueller probe and how it's losing legitimacy all the time. This is, one of the things that they're citing as helping Donald Trump win this company didn't even exist during that time period. Now, if you look up Concord Catering right now, it essentially is a company that does catering for events that happen at the Kremlin.
Huh.
But, yeah, how they helped Donald Trump win the U.S. presidency, I don't know.
Yeah, and since we're talking about the Mueller probe here and kind of updates on that, there was something I was going to mention earlier when we were talking about the Mueller probe, but I actually forgot. And that is that there is reports out this week that it's possible that Robert Mueller was given permission and given the ability to help write FISA applications for the FISA court. Which is extremely illegal since he does not have the authority to do that. But there is some breaking news that happened earlier that I wasn't able to talk about, and that is that the Department of Justice's Sarah Isgur Flores says that the department has asked the Inspector General to expand the ongoing review of the FISA application process to include determining whether there was any impropriety or political motivation in how the FBI conducted its counterintelligence. So we're going after the people that, possibly put up fraudulent FISA applications or had politically biased FISA applications as well. So that's definitely something that we needed to do a long time ago, but I'm glad we're doing it. And that's, I wasn't able to write any information down about that, but I just saw that scroll through my Twitter feed. So that's some good news as well. And the Mueller probe, it looks like it's going to be ending somewhat soon. But yeah, this thing needs to get shut down because it's not good for this country.
Yeah. And they have all these resources and they indict a company that didn't exist during the 2016 election. It's so stupid.
Well, like we said last week, they launched charges against those companies. They didn't expect anyone to actually show up, and yet they got the representatives, lawyers for these companies showed up and said, "Fine, you're going to challenge us in court. We're going to defend ourselves." And then the Mueller team's like, oops, yeah, can we delay this?" And the judge is like, "No, if you have evidence, you need to show it in court." And so that pretty much screwed the Mueller probe there. But, like I said, the Mueller probe is bad for this country. The next story that we have to talk about, unless you have anything to say, is something that's actually very good for this country.
No, let's continue.
Okay, so in one of my favorite stories for this week, the Supreme Court has legalized sports betting. The Supreme Court decided on Monday to side with New Jersey in declaring the 1992 Professional and Amateur Sports Protection Act unconstitutional, instead allowing for individual states to decide if they want to offer sports betting. Currently, only Nevada allowed sports betting, leading Las Vegas to establish a monopoly on the market. Immediately after the decision, the stock price of Caesars Entertainment rose 6%, and DraftKings said that it will enter the sports betting market. The states of Connecticut, Delaware, Mississippi, Pennsylvania, and West Virginia, note as they're a mixture of both red and blue states, have also joined New Jersey in a list of 20 other states where legislation to legalize sports betting had already been introduced. Most professional and college leagues, including the NBA, NCAA, MLB, MLS, PGA, and UFC, have been part of a state-by-state lobbying effort in order to try to legalize sports betting. New Jersey plans to have all of their sports betting markets open before the NBA Finals begin around the first week of June, although more markets are expected to pop up before the NFL preseason begins this August. So, I'm a fan of betting. I don't think that betting, I don't think gambling should be illegal. I'm a fan. I'm not a gambler, as you could say, but I definitely think people should have the right to do this. So I agree with the Supreme Court, and I just want to be able to bet on games, dude, especially when it's just straight up who you got, win or lose, bet on one side, which is essentially like what it comes down to. And it's going to dramatically change the way sports is looked at in this country. If, I'm sure some states are going to keep it illegal, but the fact that you can go state by state, that's really going to cut into Vegas's market there. However, it's also an opportunity for them to expand even further. And you have, things like DraftKings and what's the other one that's out there? DraftKings and the other, one that's just like it. I wish I had
online sports.
Yeah, online sports betting websites. Those are significantly going to start being used more, and so the market for sports betting essentially just got blown wide open. And if you want to make some money and you're good at betting, I'm not going to encourage anyone to gamble. However, I will say that if you like sports like I do, and you can analyze things and guess fairly correctly who you think is going to win games, which I will say is a trait that I tend to have. Don't be surprised if a little bit of my money starts to go towards sports betting in order to make a couple bucks on the side. Just saying right there. But, yeah.
No, but I'm not someone that watches sports or does betting, but I think that this is good either way. So.
Yeah, so I'm happy about it, and thank you, Supreme Court. Now, moving on to the next story is bad news. And that is that disgraced parking officer is going to receive his pension. Scott Peterson, the resource officer at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida, who failed to confront gunman Nicholas Cruz during the February 14th shooting that left 17 students dead, has begun receiving his lifetime pension. His first check, which was dated for April, came out to $8,702.35, according to the Florida Department of Management Services. In total, Peterson will be receiving over $100,000 per year as part of his lifetime pension. Peterson's 2017 salary totaled $75,600, and with overtime came to over $100,000. Although technically no charges have been filed against Peterson that would cause him to forfeit his pension, he is widely being criticized as the coward for failing to even try and stop the shooter. He didn't even go inside, okay? This guy is a coward. And, legally speaking, yeah, he should be getting his pension. Not legally speaking, this guy doesn't deserve a single penny as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, Scott Peterson was an individual who, was very close to retirement. And when, he was called on to serve, he backed down. And he should have been disciplined and fired in that instance just for doing so and not receive this very, very extravagant pension.
And the thing is, I was going to say, he worked as a resource officer at the school. And if you don't know how Florida calculates its pensions, what they do is they take the average of like your last 5 years pay or your highest 5 years pay, one of the two, they average it together, and then that's what you receive every single year for the rest of your life. You're wondering why these places and these municipalities and states and counties and stuff are going broke. It's because they have so many pensions that they have to pay. Yeah, I hate this guy. As far as I'm concerned, he doesn't deserve it. But yeah, if you're wondering where $100,000 of the Florida state budget's going over the next year, or at least that district's money is going over the next year, it's going to someone who doesn't deserve it at all, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
Waste
so
of time,
very
waste of
upsetting
money,
stuff.
waste of resources. You could be paying for a lot more with that 100K.
Talking about spending $100K, let's talk about some current year college craziness.
The racist, sexist, homophobic, xenophobic. You're fucking a white male!
The assumption that women are naturally better caregivers is part of patriarchy.
Die, cis, scum.
You will not divide us! You will not divide us! You will not divide us! You will not divide us!
It's time for some current year college craziness.
Current year college craziness segment of the show. We talk about the crazy stuff that happens on college campuses here and abroad, but predominantly here because, the very best of the best when it comes to college craziness happens in the United States. And for the first story for current year college craziness, we're going to the City University of New York, which is referred to as Coney.
Yes, and like we have talked about multiple times on this episode alone, we're yet again bringing up Planned Parenthood. Now, the City University of New York, aka CUNY, Graduate School of Public Health and Health Policy, is partnering with Planned Parenthood to facilitate research on reproductive justice. They will be giving one student a full tuition scholarship and a fully funded internship at a local Planned Parenthood office if the student agrees to work on various sexual and reproductive justice tasks. The scholarship aims to develop the student's theoretical knowledge and practical skills in applying a sexual and reproductive justice lens to address disparities in sexual and reproductive health in New York City, according to its application. So there you go, another reason why I feel like Planned Parenthood doesn't deserve the $260 million that we're about to cut from them is because they're giving it away in forms of scholarship money to people that are trying to do reproductive justice for whatever that means, which essentially
reproductive justice means abortion.
Yeah, they just want to expand abortions and do research into how they can provide more abortions for more people in the New York City area. So that's what they're doing there. I really don't like these people at all.
They have so much money, they just seem to throw it around. Why not cut back a bit?
Yeah, it seems like for the cost it takes to send one student and pay for their entire tuition for the City University of New York, which, it's not exactly cheap. It's in New York City. You could put that money to good use, like actually providing, reproductive health services and mammograms to people. That's something that Planned Parenthood doesn't do. So,
yeah.
Anyways.
Going on to the other story we have for current year college craziness, we're going to talk about Evergreen College.
Yeah, Evergreen College, they're back in the news this week. This time, students at Evergreen College in Olympia, Washington, are organizing another 3-day day of absence. This year's theme? Deinstitutionalize/decolonize. Some events are open to everybody, but others have been limited to only people of color. There's a quote that they said. Here it is, quote, "The mission of this event is to bring people of color together in order to create a reclamation of space and move forward into the future. In reaction to institutions' consistent disregard for our safety, we are operating independently of the college. This is a day for us, by us." The RSVP page states, quote, "In addition to POC-centered events, there will be anti-racist workshops for white folks and people who don't identify as POC. Please bring a dish or your own packed lunch and dishes, potluck style. No one whose intentions are to cause harm are allowed." Now, if you're wondering about how Evergreen's respond to this, I'll just say this. This comes as Evergreen is considering cutting $6 million from their budget in order to offset a 20% decline in new student enrollment for this year. So, yeah, Evergreen College has paid the toll for what they have done here over the last year or so. And it seems like those crazy commies that they have on campus, they said, fine, if the campus doesn't want to organize with us, we'll organize by ourselves. By the way, white people, you're not allowed.
And make no mistake about it. When they say deinstitutionalize/decolonize, they mean get rid of white people. They mean less white people. Washington State is an overwhelmingly white state, and they don't like that.
No, and it's unfortunate that they've allowed that college to become what it is right there. That college is not going to last much longer if they continue to see a decline in new student enrollment, which, thankfully parents are becoming smart and students are becoming smart and not sending their kids there. So,
One thing about this story, I don't remember the day of absence being a 3-day event.
No,
I remember it only being a 1-day event.
Yes, last year it was a 1-day event. This year it's a 3-day event. That's why they're hosting different workshops for it. Now, I will say one thing. The 3-day event is actually already concluded. It concluded on Friday. So they've already had it. But, I said they are organizing. I should say just held would probably be a better way to word that now that I think about that.
Well, that's luck to them.
I know, right? So I didn't hear anything else come about it, so I guess it was successful. However, you're able to determine that.
At least there was no, marauding bands of transgenders with baseball bats this year, so I guess an improvement.
Hey, there very well might have been. You have to enforce a no whites allowed policy somehow.
Yep, somehow.
Anyways.
With that said, let's go on to the last stuff that we have for this week, and that is international news.
Yeah, just a few stories here.
Yeah, and let's start off with Asia. We actually have some good news to talk about, and that is the U.S. and China have agreed to slash the trade deficit that we have with China. The United States and China have reached a ceasefire in the ongoing trade war between the countries. In a joint statement released Saturday, China said it would significantly increase purchase of U.S. goods and services to reduce the massive trade imbalance. The Trump administration has said that this is a top demand during their negotiations, while U.S. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin said that, quote, "We're putting the trade war on hold. We have agreed to put the tariffs on hold while we try to execute the framework." In March, the Trump administration proposed adding $50 billion in new tariffs to reduce the over $300 billion annual trade deficit we have with China. Trump even suggested upping the tariffs to $100 billion. No dollar amount for this new deal has been announced, but the Trump administration's move to take away the tariff show it must be over $50 billion and very likely to be significantly over $100 billion as well.
So this is really good news. I mean, our trade deficit with China is like over $300 billion annually. So, if you can do anything to significantly try to decrease that, then that is really good news. Like I said, they haven't set an actual dollar amount yet, but they're coming forward over the next week or so with some more information. But what it does is it proves that threatening to put those tariffs actually worked. I mean, all you have to do is say, we'll put a tariff on you if you don't sit down and negotiate, and quickly people are going to realize, it's probably in our better interest to actually sit down. And you know what? This shows that the Trump style of diplomacy is actually working. And you just got to be hard on people, and you got to be tough with people. And don't take no for an answer. Don't take BS. And even someone like China, who, economically speaking, is probably the biggest rival to the United States in the entire world, even they can come forward and say, you know what? We're willing to make a deal, and we want to make both of our countries better.
Even with the rising power of China and its growing economy, the United States is still the #1 destination for their exports, and they can't afford to miss out on this money, which is why they're willing to come to the table with Trump on this. And I mean, this is one of the things that he ran on, extensively during his campaigning, fixing bad trade deals and fixing our trade deficit. And we're seeing progress on that right now, so it's very promising.
Yeah, the two biggest things that Trump ran on was immigration and the economy, and when you start getting those into little subdivisions, you can see that fixing the U.S. trade deficit with China was one of the biggest things he had on the economy side. So it's nice to see that we're actually getting a lot done in that regard, and it's possible that, a few years from now, the trade deficit with China might be really small or non-existent. Who knows? We'll probably still have one. I can't see them completely getting rid of it. But if you can get that thing from $300 billion down to maybe like $100 billion, that significantly changes things,
Yeah.
We're never going to have a trade surplus with China. But, if you can try to reduce the deficit as much as possible, it's good.
Yeah. So, actually, I suggest that we move on to the Middle East and close with the Americas.
All right, we can do that.
Yeah, so moving on to the Middle East, the UN is looking to investigate Israel for the massacre that happened on their border with Gaza this week. The United Nations Human Rights Council has voted in support of a resolution to investigate the Israeli armed forces for the mass shooting of the Palestinians on the Gaza border during the Great March of Return. The United States and Australia opposed the resolution, with the United Kingdom abstaining. On Monday, 60 Palestinians were killed by Israeli armed forces, with thousands injured. The UN Human Rights Commissioner has identified among those killed were women, children, journalists, first responders, and bystanders. The UN Human Rights Commissioner has also acknowledged that Palestinians tried to break the Israeli border fence, but say that this did not, quote, not amount to a threat of life or serious injury and are not sufficient grounds for the use of live ammunition. So this was a huge thing that happened this week, on Monday. On Monday was also the day that we moved the U.S. Embassy in Israel from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem.
Right.
And on Monday was also Nakba, which is, I believe it translates to, I forget what it translates to, but it's the 70th anniversary of Nakba, which is the anniversary of the Palestinians being kicked out of their homes during the Israeli-Arab War at the beginning of Israel's inception back in 1948. And this was a big demonstration by the Palestinians in Gaza, trying to come towards the border. And, I mean, you watch the videos of it, they were just massacred. And, the conservative media has been spinning this as, all these people that were coming towards the border were paid off by Hamas. Hamas being the government in Gaza. But the thing is, Hamas is, let me backtrack a bit. Conservatives are saying that, these were all put out by Hamas to go out there and march. But the evidence that they're citing is Hamas is paying for all the, dead people's funerals right now. And, I've been really sickened by what's going on in Gaza and in Palestine. The continuation of the illegal blockade on Gaza is starving out the people in Gaza. They deny them basic goods. You look at reports out of Gaza, the Strip there, 97% of water in Gaza is contaminated. It has some of the highest population density in the world.
It is the highest population density in the world. Yeah, it's pretty much an open-air prison for 2 million Palestinians. And the median age in Gaza is about 15. So about half of the population of Gaza is children. So, I would like to see, and, it's already been ordered by the United Nations that these Palestinians are allowed to go home. But it's the Israelis that put up the fence and, kill them if they try to. So, I don't know. They're just supposed to, starve and die and be poisoned sitting in the Gaza Strip. You think about in terms of historical precedent, events like this. You can go back to, say, the Boston Massacre, where, American colonialists were harassing a British soldier, throwing snowballs at him. The British opened fire, killed 7 American colonialists, and that, ignited the fire towards eventual revolution. This is an event that will not be forgotten by the Palestinians whatsoever, and I support investigation about what went on there, because there was no need to fire live ammunition at these people. They could have used water cannons, they could have used tear gas, but it's just Well, they were using tear gas, too.
Yeah.
There's videos of them dropping tear gas from drones that were firing up above. There's also videos of the Palestinians shooting down the drones that were dropping tear gas, too. So that's pretty funny. But no, yeah, they were definitely using both.
But, Yeah, I don't know. And I've been listening to Michael Savage this week. He actually is highly against what Israel did there in Gaza, and he's been taking tons of flack from his callers. But it's just a matter of, you can't just mass slaughter people because they're heading towards your border. That's not even something that we do in the United States.
The especially the conservative media gets so all like, oh, Israel has the right to defend their borders. Well, it's like, well, if you allow them to just slaughter everyone that walks across, should you not have a problem with us doing it? Oh, no, we can't do that. No. It's extremely hypocritical.
Inhumane.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and, we didn't really talk much about the moving of the embassy to Jerusalem because they already agreed to do it, but it just didn't seem necessary, and they knew it was going to cause controversy. They knew it was going to incite tensions. They knew that it was on the same day as they're planning this march. So, I don't know. It doesn't look good. I don't see why it was necessary. I don't know what we gained from it, but I don't know. Hopefully the investigation figures out who ordered this live firing and they're brought to justice.
Yeah, exactly. I hope that those people are brought to justice too. So
yeah. Moving on to the other story we have from the Middle East, not as gruesome, but related to the embassy move.
I find this one funny.
Yeah. An Israeli soccer team is renaming itself after Trump. Top Israeli soccer team Beitar Jerusalem has announced that they will be adding Trump to their club name in honor of the president for the formal recognition of Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. A statement on the team's official Facebook page reads the following: President Donald Trump, in a courageous move, recognized Jerusalem as the eternal capital of Israel. President Trump has shown courage and true love for the Israeli people and their capital, and these days other countries are following his lead in giving Jerusalem its rightful status. The football club Beitar Jerusalem is one of the most prominent symbols of the city and are happy to honor the president for his love and support with a gesture of our own. So I actually know a good deal about this soccer club already. Beitar Jerusalem has won their top flight soccer league in Israel on 6 occasions. And Beitar actually has a pretty controversial history. So it is considered the most racist soccer team in all of Israel, and the fans actually get off on it.
That's interesting.
Formerly, they only allowed Jewish people to play on the soccer team. I believe it was 3 or 4 years ago they brought on 2 Islamic players who were from Chechnya, I believe, and the fans harassed these players to no end. It's I don't know, the club is very well known with connections to right-wing leaders in Israel and the Likud party. It's the party of Netanyahu, or it's the team of Netanyahu. So it's not really a team that I would want tied with Trump's name, let alone they put Trump in the name, but I don't know, it was their decision, not ours.
Yeah, and what we haven't mentioned is what the actual new name is. The new name is going from Beitar Jerusalem to Beitar Trump Jerusalem is the new name. So
yeah.
Just, thought we'd mention that, just to be thorough.
It is very weird, though, that they just put Trump's name in the middle of a soccer team's name.
Yeah, it's pretty funny, isn't it?
That would be like, like the Golden State Warriors. They became the Golden State Trump Warriors.
Hey, if they did that, maybe I'd actually root for them.
Yeah.
Anyways.
So, yeah. Let's go on to the last region of international news we have to get into, and that is the Americas, starting off with Cuba. There was an incident there on Friday. And that is a plane crashed in Cuba. A Boeing 737 on Friday morning carrying 113 people flying from Havana, Cuba to Holguin, Cuba, crashed moments after takeoff. The plane was carrying 104 passengers and 9 crew, including 5 children. More than 100 have been reported dead, with just 4 survivors being recovered, one of whom has since died in the hospital. Although the nationality of the passengers has not been revealed, the crew were Mexican, working for a small Mexican airline called
Demo.
Demo, or Global, and the plane was leased to Cuba's national airline Cubana de Aviación. Most of their airplanes were built in Ukraine, but have been plagued with safety issues recently, as 1/3 of Cubana's airplanes were ordered grounded just earlier this week before the crash. The cause of the crash is not yet clear, but the explosion sent debris over a 12-mile radius.
So it's really sad that this plane this plane crashed and 100 people died. One thing that also is worth mentioning there is that most of their planes, not only are they have a lot of safety issues, they're also old too. Some of them are 15, 20 years old, some even older than that. So that's part of the reason why they have so many safety issues, and they don't have the same type of upkeep and regulations. Because what happens is a lot of times is American and then European and sometimes Asian and Australian, more westernized airplane companies, once they've used up their planes and they try to get new planes after like maybe 10, 15 years, they sell their old ones or lease them out to smaller airline companies in countries that are smaller, like African countries and countries like Cuba. So they're essentially getting like secondhand aircraft that not only are old, they still function for the most part, but they're old, and over time things break down. They don't have the means and way to necessarily fix them, and so you have a lot of issues with them. And it sucks that this plane wasn't one of those third of their airplanes that was ordered grounded. Literally, it said earlier this week, literally the day before the plane crash, 1/3 of their planes were grounded for safety issues. And then the very next day, a plane crashes after taking off and kills 100 people. It's extremely sad, and yeah.
A lot of tragedies on Friday. I remember seeing this before the Santa Fe stuff came out. But going to the last story, since we always like to close on a humorous story if we can. Mexican politicians register as trans to avoid quotas. In the Mexican state of Oaxaca, 17 male political candidates registered as transgender females in order to reach a gender quota when they could not find enough females to fill the roles. Some of them even went as far as to dress like muxes, or males who identify as a mix of gay and feminine, in order to make their false personas more reasonable. The move is ahead of the July 1st Mexican elections, which includes a presidential election. However, the plan is foiled and all 17 applications were rejected.
I guess that means that those 17 spots are just going to be open because they don't have enough females to meet those roles, but at the same time they have to fill the quota, so I guess it remains open. Meanwhile, you have 17 people who I assume are, qualified candidates that otherwise can't fill those roles. Just goes to show you, these quotas, they can lead to some bad consequences.
It goes to show you how regressive Mexican society is.
Yeah.
Because when someone identifies as a female, they are a female.
Yeah. But no. They foiled it. You can't do that. You can't do that.
This wouldn't fly in the United States. Not that we have quotas for candidates in the United States.
No, here we have actual transgenders running for office, not fake transgenders running for office.
Yeah,
Although, you can debate whether or not it's fake and real to begin with, but...
Also, Chelsea Manning's running for Senate.
In Maryland, yes.
So, and Caitlyn Jenner. It's crazy.
Wait, Caitlyn Jenner's running for office?
Yeah, Senate in California.
Oh, yeah. Well, California's primary is in a couple of weeks, so I guess we'll find out about that when the time comes. Yeah, California's primary is June 5th, so that's literally, a week from Tuesday. So that'll be pretty interesting.
So we'll see the fate of Caitlyn Jenner very soon here. But with that said, I don't have anything else to talk about. You have anything, Bobby?
No, I think this has just been a long week, and, it seems like this upcoming week looks like it's going to be pretty interesting and long as well, but...
Yeah. A lot of stuff this week happened that, we couldn't foresee happening at all, but, I mean, that's why...
This was a week that was a mixture of some good things and some bad things happening, but, we'll see where next week takes us.
Yeah. But with that said, thank you for listening to another episode of Trump Public Radio, and have a good one.
Goodbye, everybody.